Welcome back, and it's the middle of February and I am slowly starting to believe that winter is never going to really come. Today I'm going to go and ride a couple of trails that you've not seen before, but the main purpose of today's video is to test out this new, well not new but new to me, GoPro 4 and Karma Grip that I managed to pick up on eBay. Now I am perfectly aware that discussions of mountain biking camera setups is not everybody's cup of tea. So if you're just here for the riding, skip ahead to 4 minutes 40 and you can see an edit from today's ride. Okay, so we've made it to the top of the trail and one thing is already very clear. Setting up the gimbal is a pain in the butt. I've had to put on this belt here to keep the thing stable. Let's get on the bike, take it down the trail, see what the results look like. Before we get into the comparison, I think I need to point out that I definitely set the gimbal up pointing too high, which means you're going to be treated to a lot of shots of my beard, but not so many of the bars. I've slogged my way up the hill again and I'm going to mount the GoPro 8 to the chest mount here, so we've got a better comparison. Anyway, let's start by looking at stabilization. I think these first shots highlight the advantages of the gimbal really well. Just take a look at how the digital stabilization on the Hero 8 struggles at the end of the steps. However, if you look at the next set of steps, you can see that the Hero 8 handles this really well. So this probably isn't going to be an issue that you see every time the going gets rough. The gimbal has a slight upper hand in the stabilization stakes. But what happens when we start to get into some corners? Now I'm not sure everyone's going to agree with me on this point, but I really think I prefer the Hero 8 footage. I like the way that it tilts in the corners as you ride through them. It gives it a more dynamic feeling, which for me is much more similar to the actual feeling you get when you're riding through the corners, unlike the gimbal footage, which eliminates all of that roll. So I prefer the footage from the Hero 8 in the corners. But what happens when things start to get a little bit steeper? Let's take a look. Oh, those steps were slippery. Again, in this situation, I prefer the GoPro 8 footage. I like the way that as the gradient gets steeper, the camera points down, you see more of the bike, and you get a better impression of the gradient. The gimbal, on the other hand, does its job superbly well. It eliminates all of that pitch, but as a result, you don't see so much of the bike, and it just doesn't look as steep for me. We've looked at stabilization, cornering and steeper gradients, and I think the Hero 8 is definitely starting to edge ahead. But is there anything that the gimbal combination can do better than the Hero 8? Let's turn the lights out and see what happens. You can see that even though this isn't a particularly wild trail, the image is quite blurred and the digital stabilization is really struggling in these low light conditions. What about the gimbal setup? This is where the gimbal has a clear advantage. Even though these shots were taken on a much darker evening and I'm travelling a bit faster, the image is much more stable and much clearer. So what setup will I be using in the future? Well, I think it's pretty clear. The gimbal does offer some minor advantages in terms of stabilization, but it's a bit of a pain to set up. It's a lot of equipment to be carrying around, and if I'm truly honest, it's pretty intrusive while you're riding. That's my opinion, and hopefully that helps you decide whether gimbal stabilization or digital stabilization is the best route for you. Whatever you think, I'd be really interested to hear about it in the comments. Anyway, enough of the talking, it's time for some riding. Here's an edit I put together with the best bits from today's ride. Hope you enjoy it. steps aren't any less greasy than before. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It will be awesome if you'd subscribe. Thanks for coming along, and I'll see you next time.